Hello, my name is Covenant, and today I'll be talking about the radio. Before beginning, I'd like to give a brief overview of the structure of my presentation. First, I'd like to talk a bit about the history of the radio. Then I'll go into how the radio works and clear up the mystery behind the terms AM and FM. Afterwards, I'll look into the influence of radio on music over the years and compare that to the state of radio today, and then share my personal thoughts. History of radio. Well, an important figure to talk about is Guglielmo Marconi, since he's most credited with the invention of the radio. Marconi was fascinated with invisible waves generated by electromagnetic interactions. He built his own wave generating equipment at his family estate and was soon sending signals to locations a mile away. By 1901, he was able to make a strong enough radio signal broadcast to send from Cornwall to Newfoundland, which communicated the Morse code letter S. So that was the first wireless broadcast across the Atlantic. Next, I want to talk about Reginald Fessenden because his contribution was very important to the radio and the radio industry. Basically, he was impatient with radio transmissions being Morse code signals, and basically he invented transmitting sound. So he was involved with audio radio transmissions. In 1906, he did a Christmas broadcast for publicity, so in which he read a Bible verse, he played a violin solo, and he wished his listeners Merry Christmas. That was the first radio broadcast for music and entertainment. So now I want to talk a bit about what AM and FM are, and in the process learn a bit more about how the radio works. To do so, I'll talk about an AM receiver slash transmitter, and I'll also talk about an FM receiver or transmitter. Alright, so right here we have an overview of how an AM transmitter works. Well, AM stands for amplitude modulation, so we will see that it is very amplitude dependent. Amplitude being the distance of a wave from its center. The process starts with the mic picking up sound waves, which are converted to audio frequencies. The audio frequencies are not transmitted directly. The oscillator provides a radio frequency, also known as a RF carrier. This carrier is combined with the amplitude variations of the audio signal, and this amplitude modulated RF carriers is what's being transmitted through space to other antennas. While traveling, the signal can be affected by disturbances such as lightning, which may cause the amplitude variations to spike and therefore cause interference. Now, talking about how this is received, the receiving antenna picks up the amplitude modulated RF carrier. The carrier is transferred to an audio signal. The signal is amplified and emerges from the speaker as sound waves. So also looking a bit into the components of the receiver, an important component to note is the detector. And the purpose of the detector is to use the amplitude variation of the RF carrier to convert to an audio signal. So if there was no interference, then the audio signal produced by the detector will be very accurate. But if the RF met some interference while traveling through space, then the amplitude spikes caused by interference will produce an inaccurate audio signal. Now, talking about an FM transmitter, it's important to note that the RF carrier for the oscillator from the oscillator is the same as in AM. So we have the same carrier, and it is also combined with the audio signal. And you can see that the cycles of the audio signal change the frequency of the carrier. So the positive cycles that go upward cause the frequency to increase, and you can see that those negative cycles that go downward kind of decrease the frequency. When an RF carrier is received, it goes through some processes. So remember that the carrier's frequency is what is relevant in FM. However, the carrier also contains unwanted amplitude. So we need to trim off some distortions that were likely picked up from interference during transmission. So what happens is that the limiter does that. It basically trims off the peaks of the waves, and therefore it trims off all distortions. Another important component is the discriminator. This works similar to how the detector worked for the AM receiver, except that it produces an audio signal based on frequency vibration variations, not amplitude ones. Just like before, the resulting signal is amplified and sent from the speaker as sound waves that can be heard. Now I want to go into how radios. Now I want to go into radio's role in influencing music. A bit about the golden age of radio. The golden age of radio started in about the 1920s to 1940s. This is a time in which radios became much more popular, accessible, and commonplace in the American household. Eventually, this period ended largely due to technology such as the TV, but still, during this time, radio had some very big and long-lasting or even permanent effects on music. And a big effect can be said is country music. So the promotional power of radio also gave regional music an immense boost. It was commonly seen that local stations would carry their own programs featuring the popular music of the area. So in 1927, the radio program Barn Dance was announced to be renamed as the Grand Ole Opry, which was a juxtaposition based on it following a hour-long radio program of classical music, largely from the Grand Opera. The Grand Ole Opry became wildly popular and is currently still today one of the longest-running radio programs of all time. It is referred to as country music's biggest stage, and thus popularity of country music is mostly owed to the promotional power of the radio. So I'll now play part of a broadcast for the Grand Ole Opry from about 1940.
It's Grand Ole Opry time!
Howdy, all your friends and neighbors. Tune up your fine string banjo. Take out your fiddle and your bow. Roll back the rug on the floor. Light up your walk-off pipe. Everyone will have some fun at the Grand Ole Opry tonight.
Welcome to Grand Ole Opry with Rod Brasfield, Minnie Pearl, and starring Red Foley.
Well, I broke a string, boys, so I'm going to have to do something here. Well, it slipped in the kitchen and it slipped up the lid and it slipped my pockets full of shortening bread. Stole the skillet and it stole the lid. Stole the gal to make shortening bread. Mama's little baby loves shortening, shortening. Mama's little baby loves shortening bread. Mama's little baby loves shortening, shortening. Mama's little baby loves shortening bread. Well, put on the skillet and put on the lid. Mama's going to make a little shortening bread. That ain't all that she going to do. She going to make a little coffee too. Mama's little baby loves shortening, shortening. Mama's little baby loves shortening bread. Mama's little baby loves shortening, shortening. Mama's little baby loves shortening bread. Oh, three little babies lying in bed. Two was sick and the other most dead. I sent for the doctor and the doctor said, I give them babies some shortening bread. A mama's little baby loves shortening, shortening. A mama's little baby loves shortening bread. A mama's little baby loves shortening, shortening. Mama's little baby loves shortening bread. Mama's little baby loves shortening bread. Rod Brasfield.
All right. Well, a few more of the many things that can be said about the radio. During the golden age, it was the biggest medium for music discovery. And this meant that artists certainly sought out to have their music played in order to take advantage of the wide distribution and promotional power that the radio offered. So leading to my second point, artists had to learn to make their songs radio friendly. So this definitely affected things like length and content for songs. It's not a stretch to say that radio is a big influencer of the 3 minute average pop song that's so common today. Besides the before mentioned country music, radio also helped see the rise of genres such as rock and R&B. As the television began to steal the show, radio stations began to take more risks in order to find big hits, and that led to a lot of discovery of genres and subgenres. Also, radio gave individual singers and performers more spotlight and a platform to showcase their personality. At times, a band leader may, for example, star in his own program or host a radio talent show. So, how about radio today? Well, it's very different from the golden age days. No longer is radio the first medium of mass communication that comes to mind. Streaming, in particular, seems to be the most popular way to consume music nowadays. However, radio is not dead. Interestingly enough, it still remains as a popular way of discovering new music, probably because of how dynamic it is. And one can argue that streaming is more of a substitute for CDs than a replacement for radio entirely. Also, radio is still a fairly used way to get news and enjoy talk shows, especially on the go. And the existence of internet radio, such as iHeartRadio, has made radios even more convenient. And my personal thoughts. Well, making this presentation gave me a deeper appreciation of the radio and the effects it had on music that we can even see today. While I do not think that it will ever reach its former height of popularity, I do not think it will ever go away completely, and it remains a great medium for listening and discovering music. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned something. Thank you.